Walkout with Paul and Jay, with red hot stories from post game, interviews, analysis, debate the hour, right here at the Growler.
All right, welcome into the Walkout presented by Cincy Shirts. Paul Nader Jr., Jay Morrison here with you inside of Paycor Stadium, coming off a day where the Cincinnati Bengals win in overtime, inexplicably, improbably. Who the hell knows what we just witnessed? But the Bengals are, in fact, still alive, 30-24. They beat the Denver Broncos. The season, Jay, of the inexplicable for this team continues to live up to expectations and reputation in its biggest moments.
That's true, but part of me thinks, why do we keep thinking this is inexplicable? Every time Joe Burrow does something, why are we surprised when he has a game like this? T. Higgins, monster game. It's not like he's a slouch. I mean, these are good players doing great things. There's a lot of the other crazy stuff that happened in the game that I think is kind of the I can't believe what I just saw kind of thing. But at some point, we just have to be able to say, you can expect anything to happen when Joe Burrow's got the ball and he's running this offense.
And you can expect anything to happen with the 2024 Bengals. And that's ways to lose games potentially. It felt like they were doing a lot of the things certainly that we'd seen them do in stealing wins away and putting them into the L column all year long. And so many of these, the 0-7 against teams with winning records, had felt like this, where it was a game they felt like they had in hand, and you're sitting there after the game management thing that happens at the end, after the fourth down heave by Bo Nix, after the loud Cade York doink from 33 yards in overtime, and turning it over to the Broncos with a chance to end it, and they're just going to go for the tie, and your season's going to end on a tie, and then you end up getting the game-winning touchdown to T. Higgins to wrap it up, and a huge moment for him. But at one where it felt like, oh no, this is how they lose it. Yeah. This is the unbelievable thing that's going to be added to the list of 4th and 16 and the Rico hold and the 2-point conversion and everything that we've talked about. Here it is. Here's the latest chapter that's going to end their season. But it doesn't. They are still alive. There is still a chance for them to make the playoffs. The game in Pittsburgh next weekend, we don't know exactly when yet, will matter. It will matter for the Bengals, maybe depending on what happens in front of them, but they will not be eliminated in week 17. They will go into week 18 with a chance, still small as it may be, to win. They need Denver to lose one more time to Kansas City and potentially Carson Wentz or whoever is playing for Kansas City who could rest their backups. They will need on Sunday or next weekend the Dolphins to lose. They play without Tua Tagovailoa tomorrow, who is out against Cleveland. They need the Colts to lose. They play at the Giants with Joe Flacco as their quarterback. They need them to potentially lose there or next week. That's what it is. It continues to be the same scenario. They're going to need Denver. They're going to need the Colts. They're going to need Miami to all lose a game. But, Jay, still alive.
Yeah, if this defense can have back-to-back 3-and-outs in overtime, anything can happen. I mean, that might have been the most inexplicable thing that happened in the whole game, and it's good to see. We've talked about it. Is it real? Is it fool's gold? This defense kind of turning around. That was surprising to get the 3-and-outs. But you're right. I wonder how many Bengal fans is there a Browns backer bar here in Cincinnati? Are they going to go and watch the Browns play the Dolphins tomorrow? It's going to be interesting. I don't think this feels like the long shot it once felt like. You see these upsets happen all the time in week 17, week 18. Bengals are doing their part. Now they just got to cross their fingers and watch.
And beat the Steelers next week. Also on the plate, the Steelers will have plenty to play for as they will be trying to win the AFC North. They've got to track down Baltimore, but still it's going to be in play for them. Reminder presented by Cincy Shirts here. We love Cincy Shirts. They brought They had some of their new shirts that they had down at our live show, our last live show that we had. It feels like so long ago now. So much has happened since our live show, which was at noon today. 12 hours ago. We were down there at BetMGM Nation Kitchen Bar in the Banks. It was an absolute blast. We gave out some winners to people there, not just in bar bills that I purchased, but in winning bet advice. I believe that we gave out that paid off as well. But a great time, another great time down there. We have had so much fun down this year. It was packed today, and we had the world's greatest stand on one leg contest for the bar bill. It went on a lot longer than I ever thought it would, but we did it and we had a blast. So much fun. It's been so great having down there all year. Any big event that you want to go to, it's the greatest place to go to because you got all the screens, great drinks, great food, everything right down there at the Banks. We recommend you go down there. We certainly do enjoy it ourselves. Let's talk. My main takeaway from this, Jay, I have a hard time getting past T. Higgins night. This is a night where we talked to T afterwards, and you could tell. I mean, here's a great nugget that Zach Taylor dropped in the post game here. He said that during their first meeting of the week, the planning meetings, they are in these meetings, and he's like, I'm sitting in the back while they're going through all the personnel and the groupings, and T sees that he's not in on a lot of this stuff. He's got this knee, he's got this ankle injury. They have to bake in contingency plans for all of this stuff. He sends a text to Zach Taylor right then. I'm playing. Okay. He said to us afterwards, I said, hell no. Yeah. I'm in this game. And he said, walking in, he felt it. He felt how it felt different. He felt the emotions walking in tonight, knowing that this game could be his last in this stadium. And that's why it meant so much him to make sure he was out there to go play through this injury. And then for him to go have that game. Look, I don't think Mike Brown and Duke Tobin and Katie Blackburn, Troy Blackburn, or anybody else in that front office needed a reminder how good T. Higgins is and how much he changes the dynamics for them offensively. They sure as hell got one because this was a night where they needed that. Patrick Surtain is a dude. And when people were across from him, he was shutting them down. The red zone, the short yardage, they can't get it going. They couldn't get it in. They were stopped on fourth downs. They couldn't run it. They were beating the trenches. But the one weapon that they could go to that Denver didn't have an answer for, that one extra, was T. And did they ever go to him? To the tune of 11 receptions on 12 targets, 131 yards, 3 touchdowns, including the game winner. And he, oh, by the way, had just your casual over-the-shoulder toe tap 31-yarder to set it up right before that in overtime. T admitting the emotions were surreal, that they were taking over him a little bit after the game, and recognizing, hey, if this is how it goes out, this is how I go out with a bang. Boy, did he.
Yeah, I mean, just an amazing performance. And really, you think about it, I wrote this in my piece. He made 2 big mistakes tonight. He atoned for the one. He lost the fumble on the one play. I believe it was the fourth quarter. It was a 3rd and 4. He caught the pass, had the first down, fumbled, lost it. The other mistake he made is his first touchdown was Joe Burrow's 40th of the year, and he threw it in the stands. And I asked him about that, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't even realize that." And so there's no getting that ball back. Maybe they can find out a way, whoever caught the ball, but just such a huge night for him. And I think that's one of the most impressive, what you mentioned, 12 targets, 11 receptions. It's one thing to just throw at a guy over and over again and take your share, but he caught everything that came his way tonight. And again, it's what we've seen in the past where the strong hands making impressive catches, then taking shots and absorbing the contact. And he came into this game, he's questionable with an ankle and a knee injury. And, it sounds crazy to say because it seems redundant, but he has had a lot of great games. This was by far his best game as a Bengal.
Yeah. And he kind of admitted as much. I mean, it's that how special this was for him and how big this was. He said not since his time at Clemson had he had a 3-touchdown game. And then to go out in the game winner and he sort of throws the ball in the air. You see this, you may have seen it online. I know it's in my story and it's been tweeted out there, but the the Joe Burrow meeting afterwards, that like vice grip hug, and you can hear him saying stuff to him. And this is Joe Burrow, who it was the beginning of this 4-game win streak in Dallas, who said it. I have a plan. I have a plan to keep Jamar and T and me together. T is a need, end quote. Was said by this man, and you can see how he feels, how the word he used tonight was elevates them when they need elevation against one of the best defenses in football that can take so many things away. He's the one thing that you just can't take away. And I don't want to sit here and use the walkout right now to go into the philosophy and the financials and whether it should or shouldn't be. I don't know how you don't come away from that and say one more time, does it have to be like that? Does it have to end here? There's got to be a way to figure it out. And it's a fascinating decision, but boy, that is one hell of an exclamation point to that discussion. And, we've seen this a lot over the years in other ways, Jay, when we're talking about how ownership is affected by things, whether it is a coach winning games at the end of the year, a player who does things at the end of the year, or just leaves one certain taste in their mouth, something that does convince ownership to do something that maybe is different than they thought that their plan was going to be. Sometimes it's because of something that happens in a very energized moment like this, and hearing the T chants go all night long, and then including cutting through the pandemonium after the win. That leaves an effect, and Mike Brown and the family can be affected by things like that. And you wonder what kind of residual effect 131, 3 touchdowns and 11 receptions ends up leaving on them when they head into the offseason reevaluating that decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a two-step program where the firing, the severing ties with David Mulgeta was kind of the start of it. And that kind of leads you to believe that T wants to make this work. And he's listening to what Joe's saying. Joe's got a plan, and T wants to follow the plan. And T has said that, yeah, he would like to get wide receiver 1 money, but staying here, having a chance to win a title, playing in this offense where it just suits him so well. There's a lot of other things beyond money that it sounds like he would like to make work. And you're right. This ownership group has been swayed by things they've seen in home finales, season finales, and I don't know how you couldn't be swayed by that.
Well, I don't know about T's asking price or what his market is in the rooms and the front offices across the rest of the league, except it just went up. Yes. I can tell you that much. It certainly just went up in the standalone window with everyone watching to have that kind of a performance. It just went up.
Dude loves Saturdays at Paycor. Remember last year, Minnesota, he has the crazy reach behind, and then this one, 3 touchdowns. Maybe they got to find a way to put all these games on Saturday at Paycor.
Maybe they'll get one more next week in Pittsburgh as well. What was your other takeaway from this game?
I think it was the defense. Again, not just the three and outs in overtime, but they had their warts that we've seen all year. Giving up the deep ball to Marvin Mims, a touchdown. There were some instances where you're like, oh yeah, those are the guys that we knew for most of the season. But for the most part, I thought they did a pretty good job of limiting this Bronco offense and coming up with big plays. And Joseph Osai, talk about a guy that had the game of his career. I mean, that guy, eight tackles, career high, had half a sack, a pass defense, a forced fumble. He was around all over, and that's another guy that's got to he's going to get paid. This might be his final game in this building. So I thought there was a lot of really good performances on that defense, and it's hard to say Burrow's not your main takeaway because just the numbers he put up tonight were insane. But I think, like I said earlier, it should never surprise you when he does something like that. The way the defense played tonight did surprise me.
Yeah, and we talked so much about the young core on this defense and how important it was for them to prove that the progress that feels like it started to make over the last few weeks wasn't a symptom or a byproduct of Will Levis and Cooper Rush and DTR. And I think that it maybe checked both boxes. because you did see more, like you can see how a functional quarterback was able to still take advantage of them in spots. You still, I mean, you have the 4th and 1 heave at the end where Geno Stone and Mike Hilton couldn't make the play. You have, you had Mims running right by Battle and Stone deep, and they just can't. They're not. I don't even know if they're physically capable of making that play where that guy's just running up on them. You did see them in Denver able to move the ball, but you're right. I mean, this defense this was kind of the version that we said it was what they at least needed to be to win games. If you can just not be terrible, if you can just be okay-ish, even below average, just don't be awful, and this team will win plenty of games because of the offense. And this was kind of the point of that tonight. Make a couple of stops. And they shouldn't even make that many stops, but we'll get to that in a minute. Make a couple of stops here and there. Hold them to 24 and don't allow it to be 44 or 38 or 35. And then this team can win games. And I think the slight improvement that you've seen in a few stops they were able to make did make a big difference in this one. And that's kind of how you envision it. And credit them for doing it. I mean, when everything was going sideways and it felt like, wow, here's how they're going to lose this one, and now the defense is going to go give it up in overtime, they got the stops. And that's certainly, something that is as surprising as you could have imagined. Let's get into the game management thing here, Jay. So, I mean, Zach Taylor said after the game, we'll get you a bunch of what kind of he said in regards to the way the end of regulation went down. But he pointed out, he's like, this is something that I think we might talk about and kind of analyze for years. Some of the situational stuff that was going on here between how it went down the end of regulation to Denver playing for the tie to how that could have affected and sway some of the decisions. But let's go to the basic of the decision. The idea that none of this needed to happen, that happened at the end of the game. They get down to the 6-yard line, and they are at a point where their math tells them they can have 3 plays, kick a short chip shot field goal, and there'd be about 10 seconds left and should be ball game. The decision here that changes everything is their decision not to make that be 3 knees and then ball game. They decide to run it with Chase Brown on first down with the idea and instructions to him to go down if they try to let you score. But they wanted to run it to try to get a little closer just to keep more options on the table was what Zach Taylor said. Well, doing that and getting an injury to Chase Brown changes everything. An injury occurs. You can't get off the field. The injury timeout is assessed to the Bengals, and now the math is different. Right. And now the math has changed, and it's just a terrible domino effect. And you end up in a situation where, they have to make a decision on second down. Are they just going to try to score? That they could take a knee and then try to squeeze it in on third down. But inevitably, they weren't going to get it down to that 10-second spot. Denver still had a timeout. They could have gotten it down to 40 seconds and up by a field goal potentially. Or what they ended up doing, which is Joe Burrow sneaking it in on second down and being up a touchdown with 1:15 left. What did you make of their handling / mishandling of the end of game there?
I didn't understand why you would hand off if you just want him to slide down.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's going to happen there. Point being the injury. I mean, this could go into next week. We don't know how bad it is with Chase Brown, but it's not like you're running in the open field and it's an easy slide down. There were guys around. Denver could pick him up and carry him into the end zone. If they were trying to let him score, there was other things Denver could have done there. And it seemed far safer and sure to just take the knees and bleed that out. And I don't understand if that's your plan, if you just want to get it down to 10 and kick the field goal, just take the path of least resistance. Why even mess around? I mean, really, what's the difference between the 6-yard line and the 1-yard line when you're talking about a field goal? Now, we did see Cade York doink one off the uprights at 33 yards, but this would have been, even if you're at the 6, if you take 3 knees, it gets you back to the 12. You're talking about a 30-yard field goal. So that's about right where he missed from on the 33. But I again, if that's your plan, then why not go the safest way? It just seemed an unnecessary risk. And nobody thinks about injuries there. That wasn't the risk. The risk was you still could have scored and left way too much time for them. And really, they did, because that was what the timeout after the Chase Brown injury. The Joe Burrow sneak only took 3 seconds or so. So it was about the same amount as if Chase would have scored on first down that they left the Broncos, and they took advantage and went down and scored.
I didn't have as much of a problem with the decision making after the injury, because the other side of this was they had really struggled in short yardage all night. I mean, Denver was just owning them in the trenches and up the middle. And so there's no saying, I mean, the idea being out there, and I know that just take a knee on second and then sneak it in on third. They got stopped on 3rd and short, 4th and short. How many plays at goal to go from the 1? 4 plays from the 1 earlier in the game. They had a ton of plays where they couldn't get it in, and you want to be up 7. Forced. They have a kicker that can kick from deep. Will Lutz can bomb it. They wanted to be up there and be able to be up by 7 at that point. I get that. And so that felt like you know what, just try to get it in. And if he gets stopped, then cool. That's even better. Make him use the timeout. But there's no saying for sure that you're going to get in on that 3rd down. And then they have more time and only up 3. And you start worrying about some of that situation. I get all. I think there's a lot of different ways. And that's all kind of happening on the fly when the injury throws it off. I think you're right, Jay, though, that the error, and what are we saying if they run it down and Cade York doinks it at that point? Cade York, I think that was well-founded lack of confidence in Cade York being able to kick a field goal, and that was proven out later. But that said, I'm with you. I think that's the thing you got to look at and say, if your plan is not to score, then just don't score. Just take a knee. Don't bring anything else into play. And when he says things like, there's a lot for us to talk about from this, I feel like that's probably where the discussion starts, is from this point forward. If you're confident that no doubt your kicker is going to make it from there, when you're that close, just take knees. Don't bring fumbles, injuries, other types of things, holding penalties into play. You bring all of that into play, stuff that we've seen this year. Yep. We've seen earlier this year, holding plays in big spots when they're trying to run out the clock, whatever they're trying to do. Anything can happen. I thought it in overtime as they were going down and going to kick the 33-yard field goal. I was uncomfortable with anything Cade York was going to have to go out there and do. We knew the moment that he signed that his reputation was not for making big kicks. Okay, it was for the opposite. It was for having the ability to kick it far and long and all these things, but in big moments had been questionable at best, and he was questionable at best. When he doinks that, you can just. The visceral reaction from everyone of like, how is this season like this? How is this season always like this at every turn? You feel like you're doing everything right. They did do everything right. They made all the winning plays. And then here they were again, and another way, finding what felt like it was going to be another way to lose, even though they ended up finding a way to win.
And they kicked it on 3rd down. They tried to correct the mistake. Not the mistake, but just what happened in the first overtime this year against Baltimore, where Rico dropped the punt snap. So you kick it on 3rd down, and you eliminate that chance where if he drops the snap, he can fall on it, call timeout, you try again on 4th down. But maybe that 3rd down play would have been better served to try to get a little bit closer. You get another 5 yards. That ball doesn't doink off the upright; it goes through.
It does, but instead, the Bengals find a way to win. They find a way to win in a 1-score game against a team with a winning record. It's been the only thing that hasn't happened this year. Of course, Denver only had 1 win against a team with a winning record this year, and it kind of looked like 2 teams that have struggled to find ways to win against good teams all year, going back and forth with that. Credit to Bo Nix, though. I mean, the deep ball that he threw, the launch, was an incredible ball, finding a way, the wherewithal to make that play to Mims on fourth down, and really that entire drive from him. Credit to them on that. That Denver defense is good. This felt like two playoff caliber teams. It's just, again, you go now into this last weekend of the season, and I have such a hard time looking at where they're at and not saying, geez, if any of those games from earlier this season, just you win a coin flip somewhere of a game that could have gone either way, any of those do, and it's just sickening because the Bengals right now are the team no one wants to play, and they're probably not going to have to in the AFC because of where they're at. Now, it could still happen. Crazy things happen. It's becoming a better chance now. They found a way to get through this one, and they'll try to survive another week. But this is the exact type of team they hope to be at the end of the year, especially with now, encouraging moments from this defense. Like maybe they could get them a stop at some point, and Burrow playing like this. We haven't quite totally updated the line, but I will here for you. 39 of 49, 412, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, a 122.1 passer rating for Burrow tonight. He makes it 8 in a row, going 250 plus and 3 touchdowns, continuing his record pace on that, extending it. It's just an unbelievable run. And we've talked a lot in his career about how he plays his best football late in the season. I mean, you've seen that all the way back. The moment the calendar turned to November, essentially, we've seen Joe Burrow on just a special heater. And he does this. You let this guy play all the way to the end of the season. And this is how he looks at the end of every season. Yeah. He is just unbelievable and finding ways to make every single play and figuring out how to make everything work for him. And he did it again tonight and ended it with a little screw everybody else. I'm going to win this game. Where's T? And he hit it.
It's the first time we heard the MVP chants in this game. And I still don't think he has a chance just because if they don't make the playoffs and he did lose Lamar twice. But an interesting nugget here, some stats. Since the 1970 merger, there have been 22 instances where a quarterback had 400 plus yards passing, three touchdown passes at least, and 79% completion percentage. 22 times is all that's happened since 1970. Burrow's done it 3 times. Nobody else has done it more than twice. And the guys that have done it twice, Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, like Phillip Rivers, these guys that are who's who among quarterbacks. It's just remarkable. He's only in year 5, and it just crazy numbers. When you're throwing over 400 yards, you're not normally up in the 80% range completing those passes, and he does this routinely.
And doing it against a really good defense in the Denver Broncos, taking 7 sacks and still finding ways to make plays despite all the pressure. Amarius Mims goes out. He tried to play through this broken right hand that he had. He was playing with a club on it, and they were going to see if he could go. But the thing is, you're not really doing full contact during the week, so you don't totally know how it's going to feel. He wasn't able to go. Devin Cochran came in and played right tackle. The Chase Brown injury, we don't know how serious that's going to be, if he's going to be back next week or not. So we'll see who else is rating. We'll keep you up to date on all that as we get through the week. But you had a lot of different moving pieces that were also happening, and the pressure was all night long. And he still continues to find ways to make plays. You know what makes you want to go out and do? Buy one of those Cincinnati football Superman shirts that our good friends at Cincy Shirts have made. So if you're looking for a Superman silhouette as he flies in front of Union Terminal in the Hall of Justice, you can go pick that up. Go to cincyshirts.com. Go into the sports section. There is tons of great stuff, and the ones that we gave away, including the katana shirts, the tiger holding the sword, an awesome one that we gave out to some people today. So make sure you go to Cincy Shirts, check them out. They've got all kinds of good stuff. Get something you're gonna need something. You're gonna need something for next week when it's all on the line as they try to see if they can sneak on in to the postseason. Wouldn't that be something? And then we'd have to drive to Buffalo.
We've done it before.
Done it before. We've very precariously, but we have done it before. All right. On that note, we're going to wrap it up here from Paycor Stadium on a night where the Bengals kept hope alive and won in overtime 30-24 against the Denver Broncos. We will talk to you next time. Have a good one, everybody.